Well, that didn't work out the way I wanted, but we're kicking things off. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another solo special, AaronTheQuill. I brought my buddy or my good friend, Josh Freeman. He's been on the show before, but I think you didn't have a camera last time.
I know. I said I had to level up today and get a camera.
Yeah. He, if you didn't see the episode, I think we were talking about right after they had passed the big beautiful bill, right? We brought you on to kind of talk through some of that, or was it?
No, it was the Supreme Court case.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah. So, Mom is still out right now, and so I figured if I'm flying solo, let's bring on another guest because from some people's feedback, I don't do so well when I'm all by myself. So I thought, well, let's just bring on somebody that I always have really good conversations. Josh and I have great conversations offline about all kinds of topics, and so I figure it's probably the perfect person to bring on. It's like a fun guest host. Anyways,
glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, man. So I have all our notes. We've talked about the MAGA and their facts. I guess I think we've talked about this before. That in my opinion, it's just really like the general I ignore reality unless it supports the things that I want, which is I guess common among all people, but it feels particularly more common with MAGA. So I've got like a bunch of points we can go down, and we may not get through all of them, but I figure the one that I think I thought would be good for us to start with, which I'm hoping is will lead into another conversation we've talked about having, was the election voting, like integrity fraud stuff that they still claim from the 2020 election that basically that it was stolen and that they used mail-in ballots and that voting machines were systematically rigged, and how damaging that can be. So I mean, let's chat about it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's I've read your notes too, and like I think so much of these is it's less about individual topics and individual lies, and more so about like what they're being used for and why you're doing it, because I think it's all kind of connected.
Yeah.
Like this is not just sort of like necessarily conspiracy theory. It's tactic, it's strategy. They're doing this for a reason.
Yeah. And because especially now, because we're going, there's like the new push to like ban mail-in voting, to like because I think recently, right, that's like something that the administration is trying to like re-attack before the midterms come, is to try and like keeping that topic alive and harping on it constantly probably helps with that measure, right, to garnish public support for doing that.
I mean, yeah. So like, I think especially around elections and voting and stuff, like, so much of the rhetoric from the right is like, if you ask somebody these like sort of generalized statements, like, does it sounds like a great idea to have voter ID.
Yeah.
I mean, on its own, that's who would really disagree with it sounds reasonable. It's just behind the scenes, there's so many things attached to that that sort of undermine it as an idea. Like, so for example, with voter IDs and the election stuff, voting stuff, all these red states pass these voter ID laws, but then they also make it harder to get an ID.
Right. And I was watching a debate recently between, I can't remember who it was about, but they brought up a good point, and it was something that I actually went to go look into. You have to have an ID to register to vote in almost every state to register. Like, because the registration is generally a part of getting your ID. Like at least in Texas, I know my registration to vote happens whenever I renew my driver's license. I renew my driver's license, and the vote my registering to vote is a part of me getting my driver's license.
Yeah, Illinois is separate because we register with local, but I don't. So I think it's been so long since I've actually registered, because Chicago just auto renews,
right?
Because they send your thing, to your address. Um, I'm pretty sure they just check the secretary, like they have access to the Secretary of State's database, and if your name shows up with your address, that's where they send your voter
Yeah, that's where they
registration.
send it. Let's see, and
So
I guess it's the stuff like that that makes me kind of just go like, what is if I'm registering to vote and I need an ID to register to vote, what the obsession of needing the ID to go in and vote? I don't know. And for me, it just seems like that, like what you're saying, is just like the extra step to try and kind of block certain voters.
well, it's so. I mean, here's the thing, Toad. Is in a small town it might not be as difficult, but let's say I live in Chicago. Let's say I go down to my local precinct, which is a school just down the block from us,
Hmm.
and I go, hey, my name's Aaron Minshall, I'm gonna vote, and they're like, okay, Aaron can vote. How do they
That's
know
it.
that I am me? So that's the thing, is like that's the at least stated objection or stated reason for voter ID laws, is because how do we know you are who you say you are? And again, on its face, it doesn't sound like a terrible idea.
I would say, and I think we've talked about this before. I would say that it wouldn't be a terrible idea if if what you needed to go in and vote was easy. Yeah, it was like easy to get, right? Like
Yeah.
if getting an ID, like I've heard hear people suggest that because obviously, like the whole time you're growing up, you're registered in like hundreds of different places for hundreds of different reasons.
Yeah.
The simplest one being like school, right? Like when you register to go to school, they have your name and your address. They know who you are. You have a school ID. They could
Yeah.
use that information that the second you turn 18, they just mail you an ID. Doesn't have to be a driver's license. Just here's your ID.
Yeah. And I mean,
And
the problem is too is some people are more transient than others. So like, smaller towns, there's like one district. Everyone votes on everything.
right,
Whereas in like larger towns like us, you may, half your town may vote on one representative and the other one may vote on the other half. So they do need, specific address information to know which district or precinct you're in,
right.
to know who you can vote for. So there is some sort of problems with just this, oh, we just give it to you and you go.
Yeah, well, and I
Um,
guess because the biggest thing right now is because I know right now the largest attack, and especially whenever they were talking about the 2020 election, one of the biggest things that they harped on was the mail-in voting. So like I know Trump, he makes the sweeping claim against the mail-in ballots, right? And the voting, basically saying that the U.S. is like the only country using mail-in voting, which we know not to be true. And there was like I remember whenever a lot of these issues like first came up, there was the big one where it was like, oh, did you see how they brought in those boxes? Those are the mail-in ballots, and they're all fake mail-in ballots where they were like counting late ballots.
yeah, what's it called? 21 Mules or something. There was like a big
Yeah, it
conspiracy
was
theory.
huge
I forget what it was
conspiracy.
called. I
Yeah.
forget what it was called, but there's like a crazy right wing, conspiracy
Yes.
theory documentary about it, where they were just like, oh, people are just dropping off a bunch of ballots and it's all fake.
Yeah, we
But
can't
like,
prove those are valid and blah. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, so here's the thing, like with mail-in ballots is like, I don't know how it works down y'all's way,
Yeah.
but the Cook County election, administration literally sends me my ballot. It mails it to me. It's not like I'm just picking up a ballot and saying, I'm Josh, here's my
Yeah,
ballot.
then
Like
just like
they're
sending.
mailing me my ballot with my number and I have to sign it. And so like
It was
the
the same
odds of me
way.
going to
It was the
yeah,
same way when I voted overseas because I voted overseas twice when I was in the Marines, and it's the same way. Like you request it. If we actually the military makes it really easy because you just go to your admin shop and you say, "Yeah, I want to vote," and they'll actually do like the legwork to have your ballot mailed to you based on where your state
yeah,
is. So like I just went and said I wanted to vote, and they were like, "Okay," and then like 2 weeks later, they brought me my mail, and it was my ballot, and I voted. And
yeah.
that's, but yeah, same thing. Like had my name, it has like all my information on it, and I just, fill it
Yeah.
in, send it back.
Yeah, so it's not like people are just picking up, it's not like
You're going into the
signing up
ballot
for a
shop,
listserv.
picking
Yeah,
up
like
ballots,
picking up a
just
ballot. Ooh,
filling
this
them
is a
out and
nice
mailing
ballot.
them
I'll vote
in.
for this one.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. And so let's see what else on, because shout out to mom. She put together some great notes for me and Josh to sit here and bounce this off of. So one of the other ones was so there was the thing that Maricopa County voting machines weren't broken exclusively for Republicans, and that ballots were light, but still counted. I'm trying to figure out what it is she means by this. I guess this was probably talking about, I guess there was arguments that in Maricopa County, this is not the most expensive note on that one. But let me see, because she's got a great link here for, let's see where this link takes us. Thank you everyone for your patience while I figure out how to read mom's notes.
Well, yeah, it's just like I mean, I don't know much about this. Like, I know the whole chatter where it's so hard to do this because, like, 2021, the right wing was like the election was stolen, blah blah
Yeah, I
blah
was
blah
so
blah, and
jacked.
it was really hard for liberals in 2025 to not lean
Yes.
into that impulse
Yes.
and do the counterfeit thing.
I remember after the election and like going on like Twitter or Threads, and people like, somebody would say something that was kind of maybe suggesting that, and everybody would be like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not going to be those people. We're not going
Yeah.
to be the ones.
Yeah,
I
no,
remember that.
it was such a strong impulse, and I think it goes to the thing you let off the beginning of the episode with, is like, we so want to believe the truth that confirms our beliefs.
Right.
Like, we just have such a built-in confirmation bias that we're just like,
There's
you and me
no
sitting
way he
here.
won. It's
I know,
like,
like, my mother-in-law always says we live in a liberal bubble here in Chicago,
yeah.
and it's just like, in my mind, I'm like, what reasonable person could ever have voted for Donald Trump a second time?
Yeah.
And then it's just like, you got to take a step back and go, my understanding of the world and my experience is not the same as everyone else's,
Right.
and we have to sort of like kind of check ourselves there with that. So,
Yeah,
like,
I've always
it's so
said
hard.
I've always said that too, where it's like, because me and mom, whenever we, there was a time where she didn't talk with Trump supporters at all. Like, she just would not engage with them. And then over time, the more she, the more her and I talked about it, and the more like I told her, like, I debate these people. I want to push back on their ideas because it helps me. For me, it helps me solidify my own ideas. So then and it helps me kind of, if I'm wrong or I need to change my mind about something, it kind of helps me do that too. And then and so, like, I would say, I, like you, try to always remember, like, okay, maybe I'm just not understanding anything. Maybe like, I'm just, it's a totally different worldview. So I think I get that point. I pulled up the notes. So what this was talking about, I guess in 2022, Carrie Lake. So she's in Arizona. She was a candidate for the Arizona's governor race. And I guess in Maricopa County, the president tried to claim that the machines they just have to be broken, and it was only the Republican machines. And so I guess the note that mom put out here is basically just that all the ballots that went in, I mean, they were still counted, and there was no evidence that she had lost due to those machines. This reminds me of like the more recent one is like he talks about. Have you seen him talking about windmills, or the windmills everywhere? Every time I see him talking about windmills, it makes me like, what? He's just like, these windmills in Scotland, they're so ugly and stupid and loud. I'm just like, all right, man.
No, like, I have not. Like, I try to avoid, like, unlike you, I'm actually bad at this, and I don't actually engage. Like, I don't have social media. I don't
Okay.
actively seek out.
That's,
Like,
yeah, that makes sense. I think I've asked you
so,
before,
like,
like,
for
beyond
me, I
this.
sort of like, I'm, my sort of personal quest right now is where you're just trying to, like, go out and absorb all the information you can. I'm sort of like coming into myself and, like, reading into, like I'm reading like 18th century philosophy books. Like, right now I'm reading like John Stuart Mill's On Liberty,
Yeah.
because, like, I want to understand the philosophy and principles that underpin all this.
Right.
So, like, I want to, like, it's funny, like, that book, like, it's so crazy how much of my own personal beliefs stem from that, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, my views on freedom of speech and freedom of expression, like, are so consistent with what he said in like 1850.
So you really are just like, you don't see or hear anything until it's like mainstream, I would guess, like until it's reported on,
until,
or
like, either it's every third post on Reddit, or my wife, who is on social media, comes in and says, "Have you seen this? Have you seen what's going on right now?" And I'm like, "No,
no, I have
probably
no
not."
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, like, ignorance is bliss kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there are people that definitely do that. I know. This is something that you would actually be more like Elizabeth and my stepdad, we're there, like me and mom are pretty dialed in and tuned into things, and Elizabeth's just like, whatever. Just tell me if we need to like if we need to go into a bunker, if like if there's some crazy shit going on. Otherwise, I don't care. And then like, but like you, she'll see stuff sometimes, and then she'll be like, "Hey, did you hear about this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did. Like 3 days ago."
Yeah, for me, it's I just want to understand why. Like, it's I know you and I have talked about this before. It's like I, you know, am still of the belief that most people, even MAGA people, are not bad people. I think, I don't, I think there are some that are so far down the rabbit hole that, they're probably just gone. But I don't think that about most people. I think most people, like if you were to just sit them in a room and talk to them, they want the same thing. They want to be happy. They want to be able to feed their family. They want to go to work and make a good living. They want to be happy, and that's all people want. It's
Yeah.
just it's how we get there that differs,
I and
and
I
why
I
we're not there.
I actually would not disagree. I tell Elizabeth this all the time. Whenever I there was definitely points where I would engage with like the run of the mill. This was particularly after um or whenever leading up to the election, I would just engage with pretty much anybody that was a Trump supporter in like and basically like pushing back against like why they should not vote or support Trump. But like post election, most of my anger, aggression, debate, bro nonsense is mostly trying to be directed at like people that are part of the influential spheres of the MAGA movement, right? So I'm pretty sure that, like, for example, I call him Charlie Cook, but I'm pretty sure he like actively blocked me first because when I post stuff, sometimes when I comment on his stuff on Twitter, I don't like I get no engagement on it anymore. So I don't know if he's just like, yeah, fuck that guy or what, but like those are the people that I would say are the actual problem, right? Because I think you're right. I think like there's people I imagine like that I know at work that I would say that are probably pretty big supporters of the MAGA movement, and they're just normal, chill, everyday people. They've got families and they pay taxes, and yeah. I wouldn't even say that I'm angry at those people or that I'm trying to like fight against those people. I'm more trying to fight against the people that are feeding them the information that drives them to support Trump whenever it's like
Yeah, and I
you
mean
probably
that's really
shouldn't.
hard to do because like it's you can say that these demagogues are the problem, but at the end of the day, for at least now, we live in a democracy. So the reason they're in power, the reason they have influence is because we give them either our vote capital or our attention capital. And so like, yeah, individual people aren't the problem, but we kind of are, right? Like that's it, and again, it's a hard thing to reconcile. Like
Right.
to not be mad at an individual person, yet you and the millions of people like you are why we're in this position.
Yeah, well, I will say that because this is something we talk about on the show a lot. Yes, we agree that we're in this position because of the individual people. That's also why whenever people, because this has been happening where there's people that have started flipping. Why I'm all about like bring them in, come join us, join one of us. And but I always put it as like now that you're realizing you were grifted, like you were tricked and duped into this whole situation. Now it's your responsibility to get on board and start helping us get more people to realize that like shit ain't right. Like it's all
Well,
busted right now.
bringing it back to elections too, this idea like, oh, you flipped, you're on the other team now, as though two teams should be the default.
Right.
Like,
Well,
I hate this.
so you and me are not going to agree on this. Yes, well, that's not true. We agree that I hate that that it is two teams, and I guess we might actually agree. I hate that it's two teams, but I recognize that because it's two teams, I gotta vote for the team that's like not like almost malicious in the way that they're doing. Like the team
Oh
I'm
yeah.
basically team anti-fascism. So
Yeah, no, let's be clear. I am unabashedly voting Democrat
yeah,
because one, I'm, in the Chicago bubble, but also but like, it's something I've always struggled with when it comes to elections is like in a perfect world, we have a party system now. I would vote for a party that wants to get rid of the two-party system. But by doing that, they're undermining their own ability to stay in
right.
power. which means that the policies they want to pass won't get affected, meaning I don't even have the choice to not vote for them
Right.
anymore.
Well, and that's well, and you know, if I consume a lot of political content, and that what's funny to me is that that always seems like it seems like everybody agrees that the two party system sucks, and that we should find a way to function with like there's tons of countries out there that have basically broken the two party system up into like 4 to 6 parties because they have like weighted voting and like stuff like that. And it lets it basically keeps, in my opinion, it keeps the government a little more balanced. Whereas ours is basically just like doomed to go down the rabbit hole of either like extreme left or extreme right. And it's just whoever gets to the finish line first, we're either going to be the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. It's like,
Yeah, no, it's like ranked choice voting would break it.
yeah,
Ranked choice voting would be because let's say you have three people, and let's say it's super polarized right now. So
yeah,
we have Kamala and Trump, and then we have Joe Schmo in the middle. Everybody who votes for Kamala is going to go, I will never vote for Trump. So their rank two is Joe Schmo. Everyone who votes for Trump says, I am never voted for Kamala. So their rank two is Joe Schmo. Who wins that election? Joe
Joe
Schmo.
Smo. Yeah, that's the guy. That's the
Yeah.
dude that wins. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we can do that. Like it's just we have to do it. But
I mean, that's how. Isn't that how? If I remember, isn't that how Zenzani down in New York? That's how he got elected, right? Because they do ranked choice voting in New York,
I don't know, but I believe
or at least
so.
for the
Like
primary.
yeah, so like it's and that's the thing is like that's why like you go over to a lot of other European countries, they have so many factions is because you have all these people where you're like, well, third party candidates have a chance
Right.
because if both sides agree that the third party is the best second choice, that's that person wins.
Yeah. You get that guy, and I mean that, and stuff like that could be. I mean, stuff like that could be solve so many problems.
Yeah, no,
It would have
again,
made the election interesting.
oh yeah, for sure. And I want to put on my conspiracy hat here. It's just like, but the problem is to get ranked choice voting, you have to have the Republicans and Democrats agree
Agree for ranked choice voting.
to voluntarily give up their stranglehold,
Yeah,
which will
which right now
never
is
happen.
no way, no way. I
No
agree,
way.
no way. Um, yeah. So let's see the last fact I guess we had on here, and this is probably we talked about this a little bit before the show, and um, this is like basically that like both sides. Let's see. So this is on factcheck.org. So both sides distort incomplete vote counts to falsely suggest election fraud. So yeah, I think this is let's see. I'm sorry, I'm gonna briefly run down this. So this was on the morning of election day. Conservative influence Benny Johnson posted on X. Weird how 20 million plus Democrats just disappeared in a single election for 2020, 2024. Super duper strange, man. Joe Biden got 81 million votes and Kamala got 60. Very sus. I remember whenever this came up, and then it was like, I was just like, okay, that doesn't really seem to make any sense. And then once the final voting count was done, it was like more people had actually voted in the election, and that it was just that like a lot of it had not been counted whenever they were like making all these crazy claims about how there's 20 million voters missing. And then like, and Trump had gained like so many more voters. It was just like,
Well, I mean, it's the corollary of the blue wave that happened with Biden, where
mm,
like you just look at the demographics. Republicans tend to be older, at least in the prior election. That's a weird trend in the 2024 election, but like they tend to vote in person.
yeah,
They count, they vote in person. Whereas, liberals and Democrats tend to take advantage of the remote voting. So those take longer to count. So you have
right,
this huge influx of red votes that gets countered by the blue votes that come in later.
right.
And so, like, you have all these people like, oh, how did the Democrats just
How on
happen to
earth?
find the right number? Yeah. Or the corollary, it's like, when people were freaking out about Biden at first, you're like, oh my God, Trump's winning again. how did this happen? It's
Oh
just like, well,
God.
just breathe. Like this,
Yeah.
this idea that we need instant gratification, that all votes and everything should be
What's
instant.
the
We need to know
information
right
age,
now who
man?
wins.
I want to know now.
Yeah,
I want to know
yeah, exactly. It's
yesterday.
just now my curmudgeon is coming out because like I'm just like rabble against this whole like
Yeah.
technology thing, but it's just like
Yeah.
just have some patience and breathe for a second.
Yes.
Like truth takes time to develop.
Yeah, well, and that's like I guess for anybody that's just hopping in, we're talking. Whenever the 2024 votes were initially counted, like the very next day, people were on Twitter just being like, "Oh, there's 20 million votes missing. Weird. What? They're not even there." And then it was like, like California's only 50% done counting, right? Like
Yeah.
there are states that haven't even finished. They're just like they're still counting all the votes, and then like once everything was counted, it's like more people in the election. Like I said, more people in the election had voted. It was just like, dude, it's chill. Like what you're saying, just chill out. We gotta wait. Gotta wait till we get all the votes. Yeah. So those are those are basically the things. The assertion that the 2020 election was stolen. I mean, we talked briefly about this yesterday about the claims that the 2020 election was stolen, what that led to on January 6th, what that continues to, I guess, assert today. Did you hear that in Oklahoma? I think it's Oklahoma. They're going to start, I guess, teaching it as a alternative fact in schools that the 2020 election was stolen. You heard about that? I was reading about it yesterday. I'd have to go pull it up, but
No.
I guess that's I don't know if I don't remember if it's I think it's just a push to include it in the curriculum, not that it is yet implemented in the curriculum, that they want to make it like as a part of the curriculum.
I
As like an
mean, like
alternate story too. I'm like, how the fuck?
yeah. So it's so crazy cuz like part of me part of me knows that like if I were king, like that is an insane thing to teach.
Yeah.
But then you have to get to the principled part of me where it's like, well, freedom of speech and like this idea that like, you know, if you want a truly informed society, you basically have to put everything out on the table and let people use their critical thinking skills to choose what they believe. And some people are going to believe wrong or not going to believe truth. But like it's a very challenging thing to think about what freedom of speech means and like this idea that you have to let falsities go forward
Yeah.
for various reasons.
Well, I guess the pushback to me on teaching something like something like the election was stolen and is that we're talking about in public schools, right? And that there is no suggestion of facts to support that. Like my cause so like here's I guess another example. I don't want them teaching religion in schools because I feel like there's a separate place for that, right? I feel like parents should be teaching that at home, or you can go to church and you should be learning that. So it's not something that should be taught in schools. I would say that schools should only exclusively be teaching things that are like true, provable, like factual, and that anything that's outside of that can be taught. If a parent believes that the election was stolen, then it should be the parent should be teaching their kid that, right?
Sure, but so then I'm gonna push back, and this is sort of like
You could
the
devil's
problem
advocate
with
me, it's
that.
fine.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean it's a little bit devil's advocate,
Yeah.
but not really. Who gets to decide what's true?
Well, I mean, w- that's a great question. To me, because to me it breaks down on like there are people that go out and they figure these things out, right? Like there's people where it's like their job to count the election. There's people that it's their job to do like voter certification. There's people where it's their job to like verify all that information is there's people that's their job, that's what they do, and what they report. I mean, that would be what's true, right? Like there's no way to make it where it's like, um, oh, how do we know that? Like that comes up so much, and that's what I'm thinking about. People are always like, well, how do we know that's true? I'm like, because somebody went out and like did the work to find the information and say, oh, actually, that's not true, or that is true. Like we don't all need to see it firsthand for it to be true or not. Where there's people who that's their job, that's what they do.
So I would maybe posit it a different way. Is there's a difference between teaching facts and teaching truth. truth is the conclusion from facts.
Okay.
So you can teach facts, but everybody has to come to their
Do that on their
own
own.
belief, to their own conclusion that something's true. And something's only true to somebody when they reach that conclusion. So so it's I am like and again, it's one of those, it's the I don't want to say hypocrisy, but sort of like it's the conundrum of freedom of speech and liberal society is you can't lead a, you can lead a watered horse, but you can't make him drink,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like you can tell people all the facts, but if people for whatever reason aren't coming to the conclusion, which is, in your view, objectively true, you can't force feed them that truth because people recoil. They fight back against it. People don't like being told what to do. You know that about me. I hate being told what to
Yeah,
do.
well, and I would say that because there's tons of psychology to back up like the whole like push against what is factual and what's not, and some of that is like the conspiracy theories side of things, where people that buy into conspiracy theories generally do it for a lot of different reasons, and like some of it is just because they want to feel like they're on the inside. They're the ones that know the real information. And then, but the other side of that too is, and we've talked. I don't know if you watched the show where we talked about this, but it's also the complexity of a thing that makes it difficult for people to understand, and so then they just don't want to. They don't trust the facts because the example I think I use is like the hoe versus the plow versus a modern day tractor, right? Like everybody understands how a hoe works. It's really simple. It's just a tool. You can till the ground with it. It's no big deal. And a plow is not much more complex, but it's got some complexity to it. You have a cow, you got to stand behind it and push the plow. Then you get to like a tractor, and you start talking about like combustion engines. You start talking about like hydraulic systems. You start talking about any of the electronics in it, and it just gets to such a complex point that people just don't really understand. And because they don't understand, they're just choosing to be like, okay, well, I don't understand how that thing works, so it's magic, and I don't believe, and like they'll just come up with like their own logic on how it is that it works.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's not a new idea. Like that sort of idea has been around for a very long time. Like, again, one of my favorite books, one of the most influential books forever, in my opinion, is Leviathan.
Hmm.
Um, he begins that book, or Hobbes begins that book by talking about like why religion is a natural thing, and this idea people are really scared of the unknown,
Right.
and like not knowing something is terrifying
For a lot of people,
just
yeah.
to a human psyche. Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying not knowing something. So this idea that like when we become so complex with science and whatever that it is impossible to understand it unless you're an insider,
Right.
we do start to push back against it, and it's like it's a very natural thing.
Yeah. You see this a
It's
lot in
it's very
aviation
hard.
because, like in my field, I'm not going to get too in depth. I don't want to dox myself, but like I see it a lot. I see it a lot in aviation where like people will. I'll be like on the aviation on Reddit on like some aviation post, and people will be talking about like an airplane, and it will be all bullshit. Like somebody would just be like spewing bullshit. I'm like, none of that's true. But that goes to your point that like unless it's your job, like unless you know exactly how these things work or exactly like anything about the field, then you're either going to just believe the thing that you hear because you don't have the time, effort, patience to go and find out for yourself, or you're just gonna not care at all. And so I feel like maybe this side of like, especially when we're talking about the voting side of things, is probably that's such a complex, like it's so complex, and so it's like
Yeah, I mean, because
people are
if you
just
asked me how an airplane worked, I would just say magic air on bottom, not
It's
magic air on top.
yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
I just think
make
of
it
an
fly.
airplane.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Magic air.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so I guess that's like you know, that's that goes back to I guess to that point, right? We talk about the if they are teaching facts in school, but if it's really complicated, people may not buy into the truth, right? Because you're saying the difference between truth and facts
Yeah.
is yeah. I just want to make sure I'm following along, right? Like that's the
Yeah,
kind
no,
of the
I mean,
basis.
the old saying is truth is written, or, history is written by the victor. The idea that whoever wins the war of fact and knowledge gets to write what the answer is.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about, oh, well, in Roman history, this all happened. I'm going to go ahead and guess that the Romans embellished a little bit, and that has now become truth.
Yeah.
That has become fact,
Yeah.
right? Where my guess it's way more complicated than what actually happened.
Yeah.
So like this idea that, and again, that's one of the big right-wing Republican talking points is, well, why do you government get to decide what truth is? You know who decides what truth is? The communists. North Korea decides what truth is. Russia decides what truth is, and I don't want to live in a country like that.
Yeah. Well, now they like Russia, so. But no, sorry, but I get you. I get your point. I get your point.
I think that's point 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's. Yeah. I mean, the election's stolen. I mean, that's, if anybody's watched pretty much any show, it is such a very contentious point. Regardless. But it's, I guess, not even regardless of what side you're on, because one side firmly believes the 2020 election was stolen, and the other side doesn't. One thing I know that Mom didn't put in the notes, but I'm sure you can understand this, and a lot of people don't even know about the fake electorates, and they don't even understand that whole process of how on earth could he just bring in electorates and why didn't Pence choose them? They were valid. And it's like, once you dig a little bit, you're like, they weren't valid. They were just like Pence didn't certify the vote because the electorates that were brought in weren't valid electorates. Like they were trying to do in my opinion, they were trying to actually steal the election just the other way.
Well, so what is actually crazy is with the electoral college system, which, I, I would reform it in a little bit. I don't think we should get rid of it, but
I think we've talked about that, like double the size of the college. And
yeah, no, you talked about that last episode, I believe, is double the size of Congress.
Yeah.
But what you're doing technically, like from an actual legal standpoint, is you are voting for somebody to go to Congress and vote in your stead. It's a representative vote.
Right.
And there is technically nothing in the Constitution which prohibits an elector from going like, JK LOL, I'm not voting. I said,
yeah,
so
well, fuck that.
Now, states have laws that prohibit it. And I don't know. I can't say every state does, but states actually make it criminal penalties and will retroactively invalidate votes if somebody goes there and tries to vote. So they have technically they have backup voters. Like if your voter says, let's say you elected an electorate for Kamala and they go, I'm voting for Trump. The way the state law would work is you void that vote and the next person jumps in.
Right.
So that's the way it works. But unless those laws are in place, technically somebody can just willy-nilly go
in there like,
yeah, I'm voting for myself. The electors voted for me to be president. So one vote for Josh.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I guess that isn't really what happened, right? Because this wasn't like yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. I was gonna say because it wasn't like
people to come in and replace the.
Yes.
They didn't want to change the proper elector's vote. They wanted to change the
elector. Yes. And then so they had these electors in there, and they were trying to get Pence to choose the ones that they had brought in to say, and that was kind of that was basically the whole. I mean, that's where all the lawsuits came from. Which that's why he's a felon and for some of it. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And what's interesting is whenever that topic comes up a lot, most people don't. This is another thing to talk about, the complexity of a situation. People just kind of they're just I don't understand it. Most people don't even realize that that's what happened, right? That was the whole issue was that there were these electorates just chilling that were supposed to be for Trump, and they were going to replace Biden electors. So if you don't know what we're talking about, you should definitely go check it out. There's tons of content. There's tons of articles about it too. But let's see we talked about. This is something that we talk about on the show a lot. Mom did a really big thing. Basically the immigration border certificates and the migrant criminality claims. So the claim, and this is basically that so the White House pushes repeatedly large and often unsustained numbers about migrants with criminal records. claims that illegal immigration is skyrocketing or that migrants are responsible for spikes in violent crime. I don't know how much
Yeah.
you looked into this.
I mean, I know a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
again, like I definitely don't do as much research as you, but like I've read a little bit. Like I'm not ill informed,
Right.
but like I don't actively go out and like try and find what everyone is saying about this thing, you
Right.
know. If I'm wrong, and I probably have been, obviously feel free to correct me at any point during this. So I know a little bit. I know more about the first one because it's a little more legally than this next one is. So
Right. Yeah, so the the again, we talked about this on this show a lot. But one of the things that I always find or actually this is something that you might actually have seen or be familiar with cuz yeah, it was on Reddit where like Joe Rogan talked about how they said, "Oh, we're going to find the criminals and we're going to kick the criminals out," right? Which I think everybody could agree. Like, if you break the law and you're here, I use the term "you're here on a migrant status." If you break the law, yeah, I absolutely think you should be deported. That's it might not be the popular opinion, but that's what I think. And then Joe Rogan's on his show and he's talking about like, oh yeah, they I thought they were gonna get all these criminals up, but they keep arresting people at like Lowe's and at like farms. They're like, these people they're like at their job and they're like arresting them and deporting them, and that's not what I thought we were doing.
well, so one that ties to what you just said at the beginning. That ties to what we said about the voter IDs. Like again, this idea that I'm going to go out and deport criminals, that is probably a hugely popular
Yeah, I would imagine
opinion.
most
Like,
there's not
yeah,
a
like
lot of
I agree
people.
with that. Like
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. Like give them to arrest somebody for a crime, convict them of the crime, instead of having them languish in one of our prisons, deport them. That gets rid of a criminal migrant, and it also saves us the taxpayer money of having to have somebody who isn't an American citizen.
right.
Like
Yeah.
it sounds completely reasonable. I think what's going on here a lot is data manipulation by the White House. So one of the big things that I know that they're doing is they are talking about illegal immigrants as though being an illegal immigrant itself is criminal.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Like
That is
that is a civil
exactly.
violation.
That is the biggest problem. This is the thing. Okay, this is the thing I hit on all the time. Okay, and whenever we talk about an illegal immigrant, it's always like, well, they entered the country illegally. Okay, well, entering the country illegally is not a criminal offense; it's a civil offense that's typically tacked on. And you know this, you're a lawyer. That's typically tacked on to a crime. So if you commit a crime, then you being illegal just becomes like basically like, I guess, a tacked on to whatever crime you committed, and that's a part of like the deportation side of things. But then like the thing that's crazy is that most of the people that entered the country, they came in and they were claiming some kind of status, and then they were going before a judge or they were being given court dates and like report dates, and they were like doing it, like they were given like, hey, here's where you need to be, this is the courthouse that you need to go to, and this is the day that you need to be there. And they were showing up. Like, that's why ICE agents like arresting people that are going to their immigration hearings.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know the actual facts, but it's a huge majority of illegal immigrants came into the country legally, not just from like,
Oh yeah, that too. That's another
asylum
one.
status or it's expired visas.
Yeah, they'll come here, they'll work. Like, I know it's pretty common for people to come like from Canada or from Europe on a work visa, and then they either were hired for contract work or they lose their job and then they just stay. They're just
Yeah.
like, they doesn't didn't nobody's going hunting after them. But you don't hear about that, and those aren't the people that are being arrested at Lowe's.
No, I have thoughts about that, but that, like, when we cite all these numbers, that's a huge majority of them.
Hmm.
And, we can have reasonable disagreements about whether we should be punishing them by deportation. Um, and I think that's a reasonable debate. But this idea that, we're just rounding up a bunch of brown people because they might be illegal immigrants, determining who is an illegal immigrant or not, sending some of them to Honduras and
I
El
saw,
Salvador,
yeah, they're
and like
sending people to
just like,
Uganda. They're sending
yeah,
people to crazy, like,
it's
okay,
insane.
yeah,
Like
crazy.
punishment needs to be proportionate to the crime.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's crime is, a speeding ticket, like I don't necessarily think that guy should be deported. Now if, they're having problems like, oversee, like in Europe right now. I know there's a bunch of protests because they're claiming sexual violence by immigrants. Like, if we get to those levels of crime and that type of criminality, like that's a different story. Like, have some
There-
proportionate reaction. But right
yeah.
now it's just everybody
The,
who does anything wrong. Oh, you looked at me wrong. You threw a ham sandwich at a cop.
Well,
So you
and
get
then
deported.
and then there's the bigger problem is like the due process side of things is
Yeah.
that was whenever we did a whole episode, Mom and I, on immigration, and that was actually the biggest crux of the issues. Look, I'm not saying don't deport people. I'm saying if you're gonna do it, then why aren't we following our Constitution and having due process to take them? We're just saying they're criminals and then just kicking, like deporting them. Some of them not even to where they came from. we're not taking them to court. We're not having. There's no trial. There's nothing. We're just like, yeah, okay,
I mean,
get on the
so the
bus.
thing is, like,
Like Jesus
sending somebody to a location that is not their home country,
is insane to me.
like abducting, like, sort of example, abducting, like, so what we did, like, for example, in Afghanistan, where we basically kidnapped Taliban people and put them in Guantanamo Bay, that is technically a war crime called extraordinary rendition. Like,
Yeah.
it is a war crime to take prisoners from the battlefield to a third country.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I remember, I wasn't as politically involved then, but as I've gone back, I remember that the reason why it was like a gray area, and you can correct me, was because they weren't bringing them here; they were bringing them to Guantanamo Bay, which, like, well, technically, it's not the U.S. and like, are we breaking the rules?
because we have a lease there, it's technically U.S. soil, and that's the only reason it wasn't actually a war crime.
Yeah.
Like,
We're
this is
just
like
we're gonna
technically,
loophole the shit out of this.
but like the sort of like the whole thing about black sites, where it's been, I don't know if it's been actually confirmed, but like this idea that there's like these prisons in Eastern Europe that we used to torture people in. Again, that's a war crime. But we're doing the same thing to non-criminals right now.
Yeah. Like this
so,
is well, and that's the other thing that I find kind of crazy is that the entire argument, the entire basis on is making it legal is the claim that that we're being invaded by Venezuela, and that he's basically using I can't remember what it's called right now, but he's using one of the powers of the president to say, oh yeah, they're enemies of the state. We are within our legal capacity to do what we're doing because we're being invaded.
So that messaging is super important because both constitutionally and from a law perspective, when we use the phrase invasion,
The Alien Enemies Act.
yeah. So like when we use these words, these buzzwords, it gives the president emergency powers to allow him to act without Congress.
Yeah.
And so, he's using those buzzwords to sort of justify his use of those emergency powers. The problem is, it is completely undecided, as far as I'm aware, in the law, who gets to ultimately make that decision. Who does the president get to determine whether we're under an invasion, or does Congress? Because the president, like if you read some of the legal arguments coming out of the president's camp and at the Supreme Court, their theory is, well, only the chief executive gets to decide whether we're under an invasion. And once he makes that decision, it is an unassailable conclusion. It becomes truth. Therefore, it is true, and every law which allows me to use invasion powers, I get to use.
Yeah, this is like, and to me, this connects to what we're seeing, and we've definitely talked about the executive. What is it? The executive unitarian theory.
Unitary executive theory.
Yes. Yep. Where like that's the thing that I like every single time I see something happening, and this using the Alien Enemies Act and everything, I'm just like, man, Steve Miller's really in there just selling that theory as like, look, we can do this. Look, watch, this is how we'll do it.
And John Roberts was actually one of the early adopters and writers of it. Chief Justice Roberts, like he's been writing about it from an academic standpoint for a very long time.
It's yeah. And that I guess I think you might have been the first person to mention it to me that made me go and read about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah,
is
no,
exactly what's happening, like this
well, and
verbatim.
it's again, it's an interesting philosophical debate about what what's the role of the government? Because like you know, there have been times where a powerful unitary executive who did wildly unconstitutional things saved our country. FDR did it.
Yeah.
FDR did incredibly
He used
unconstitutional
the, and
things. And
I was reading about that because you had mentioned that before. I mean, he was a very effective user of the bully pulpit.
yes,
He was
yes.
very effective.
I mean, but and the thing is, so it like the problem is, and it goes back to sort of the due process thing, is like, are we results driven or are we process driven? Because like I'm not, like FDR saved this country in a lot of ways,
Right.
but he did it in dubious ways. So if we have somebody who's benevolent, who's abusing power, is that okay? Is that a moral and do
I
benevolent dictator, if you will?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, and you know me to be this kind of person. I think that things should be applied unilaterally, regardless of if I agree with them or not. If that makes sense. Like I would say that I might have even been the kind of person that at the time might have been like, okay, what he's doing is good, but he should not be doing it. Like the way he's doing it is wrong, and he should not be doing it that way. Like I would say that I'm process driven, right? That
Yeah.
more than results driven.
Well, liberals tend to be, and that's I know we've talked about it. Ezra Klein's new book Abundance talks about this, where he's like liberals being so process driven is actually a huge detriment to them
right.
because the process has become so mucked up that we can't get shit
Yeah,
done.
we can't get anywhere. Yeah, and that is true. It's one of the it's one of the bigger contention points I have with um my friends that are more left leaning than you is like they want to have like this big and then yeah, I know you do too, but you're at least it's different because they want to have like the reason why is because what they want, in my opinion, would take a revolution, right? It would just take like some bloody civil war and a complete rework, an entire like a burning of the Constitution and rewriting it in the like most quickest, fastest, insane way that you could do it. Whereas I am of the mind that yeah, it would take longer, but I would rather us go through the process. It's going to be hard. It's going to suck, but rather than a big bloody war, why don't instead we find a way to like change policies and like basically rewrite the Constitution through amendments. But
Yeah, and I mean, like I've told you this too, is like I'm engaging in sort of a thought experiment in conjunction with my sort of reading old philosophy, where like I'm rewriting many parts of the Constitution that I think like, what would it take to like rewrite this in a way
yeah.
that I think would work? So I do.
um
I think we need a new constitutional convention.
yeah, I
I
mean
think we need to rewrite a lot of it.
yeah, well, and I think with we've definitely talked offline before about how like the fact that what the last amendment was what I want to say 25 years ago, but that was probably 10 years
I think
ago.
it
I
was
was
in the
saying that.
90s.
Yeah, it was
I
forever
think it was
ago.
like 96 or 93 or something
Yeah,
like that.
it was just a long ass time ago, and that by design we should have been amending the Constitution a lot more than we have.
Well, I mean, Thomas Jefferson, I don't know the actual fact, but he thought we'd be rewriting it every generation.
Yeah.
Like he was just like, oh, this is
That's why we have this. Why do we have that process?
yeah, that's
We're
why
just
we can
gonna amend it.
amend
We'll
it.
just
Like,
change it. We'll fix it. Make it
yeah,
better.
exactly.
Yeah, that was like I saw a debate recently with those one of those TikTok debate guys. I don't really care for those guys, but where he was arguing with somebody and they were like, hey, he was like, we shouldn't be changing the Constitution. It's not meant to be changed. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, it's supposed to be the way that it is, and we don't change it. And it's like, there's like a whole process, right, for changing it, like called amendments. Like that's what amendments are.
And so this is actually like it was going to actually bridge the gap between sort of the immigration and the economic stuff we were talking about. But like, there's a good way to make those argument. Like my dad used to make that argument, and then the response to it, needs to be, oh, so you don't like the Second Amendment, right?
You think, yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? That's one of the cores of the Constitution. I'm like, no, it was an amendment. Like
It
that
was
was a
added.
change we made.
That was exactly
So
what he
if
said
we
in that debate. Was
if we're
like,
getting if we're getting rid of all those amendments, like just get rid of them because
yeah, those are all
I mean
amendments.
it was
Those are all
like
additions to
yeah
the
it's
original
like
document.
it's exactly like this idea. It was supposed to be changed. It was supposed to be updated.
Yeah.
Um, but like when you're arguing with somebody who does that, try to like I think you guys talked about good faith argument last time is engage their argument from their point of view. So like with the immigration stuff, one of the big reasons why people are so anti-immigrant is the South Park, they're taking our jobs.
Yeah.
This idea, like accept that argument for a second. Accept it's factually true that immigrants are taking the jobs of people who would otherwise want to do them. But flip it on its head. Instead of saying like immigrants are taking those jobs, say, well, aren't corporations giving them those jobs? So who's the bad guy here? Is it the person getting the job, or is it the person that has the power to not give it to them?
This is that. What's interesting is that is actually like the left-leaning argument against, against illegal, like quote unquote illegal immigration, is that it enables the like corporations to take advantage of them because they don't have workers' protections like they would if they were American citizens. I think the counter to that argument, because I've had that I've actually had that argument before, because now that's a thing that the like MAGA and the Republicans like to do. Well, these corporations are just taking advantage of them. I'm like, well, if they're here on migrant status, right? Like if they've come into this country and they're on they're on migrant status, they actually do have worker protections. Like if you come in and you've been given a court date and you're here, like legally, which really they are here legally, they're just waiting for a hearing. They actually do have worker protections.
Yeah.
The thing is that they don't know they have worker protections, right? So the corporations are really taking advantage of their ignorance, not their status, right? Which is like the kind of what defeats that argument is what we should be doing is if they're brought here, we should be there are agencies and places that do this. We should be teaching them what their rights as migrants are. Like, hey, you're here on a temporary approved asylum status. You have workers' protections. This is how much you should be getting paid minimum wage. You should be getting, this and this and this. And like, these things are yours to have because you're here on a migrant status.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it goes back to the thing we talked about before is like the control of information is super valuable. It's super important because like and I talked to you about this before the show came on, but there's an old like Plato talked about the allegory of the cave, and you said you didn't know what that is.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one.
So essentially, think of it this way, like very very brief, like a person is raised from birth and born into a cave, and they have only been looking at a wall, and behind them is a fire, so it is casting their shadows onto
Right.
this wall, and for all they know, that is world, that is the reality of life. They have no knowledge of anything else that exists behind them. That is everything. There is nothing else behind them. Life is that shadow.
Right.
And if somebody breaks out of that cave and goes out and, Plato talks about them being blinded by the light of enlightenment, of reaching, understanding and recognizing the rest of the world.
Right.
That's until you experience that thing where you have counter knowledge, where you have breaks your understanding of life and how it works, you don't know better. You not just you don't know better, you can't know better.
Right.
And even Plato said when that guy who broke out of the cave went back and tried to tell the rest of his buddies who were just staring at the wall, they like got mad at him. And because no, you're lying, you're terrible. This is fake. It's fake news. It's the original fake news.
Well, go ahead. It's a super interesting. It's something that I didn't know anything about this analogy, but we have talked about that. That like the other problem that you have, at least within the MAGA movement, is that even though like the wall, the cracks are forming and they're starting to see like maybe I was tricked, some of them will never ever believe it. They will just follow blindly whatever the president says. Like a lot of I see this a lot on Truth Social. Yes, I'm on Truth Social. Shame me all you want. I don't post there. I just want to see what they're talking about. but like Trump will post something, and all of the comments under it will just be like in complete agreement of whatever it is that he posts. And so it makes me think about like that. Like, even if what he posts is indirect, like it directly contradicts something he promised he would do, like the Epstein files are a really big one. Like, oh, we'll get him released. We'll get him, and that never happens. And then he says, oh, we don't worry about it anymore. It's crazy how many people like on Truth Social were like, yeah, you're right, they don't matter. It's just like, wait, stop. What happened? But I think it's like what you're talking about. They're so locked in their mind that like they vote that Trump is, saving America and he's making America great again. That they refuse to acknowledge anything that is like counter to that, because
Yeah. Again, it's because it's scary. It's scary to be wrong. Like, it's scary to not know things.
yeah.
And like it takes a big person to admit when they're wrong. Like, so it's just one of those things where, like, these like all of these facts we're talking about today, that's sort of the underlying thing, is like, and that's why I said earlier, it's really hard for me not to like get mad at and be angry by MAGA people, because until you talk to them, how do you know they don't know better? Because it's easy for us, having seen the light, to say you should know better. But how do we know that they should? Now, if
Well,
you engage with somebody who is super well educated, super well informed, and is like, you know what, I'm still MAGA, then you can go, you know what, fuck you, buddy.
yeah, and that, yeah, like I said, those are the people that I like. Those are generally the people, like I said, that I push back really hard against, is people that are, that are academics or well informed. Because to me, it steps outside the realm of, of you being ignorant, and it steps into the realm of like intentionality. Like, you're intentionally
Yeah.
being like misleading or malicious, or like you're doing it for, you're grifting. Like, you're not doing it for because you legitimately believe these things. You're doing it because it gives you clout, or it gives you influence, or like it gives you whatever it is that that you're
You want.
seeking. Yeah.
Yeah, and to go back to what you said, that's when it becomes bad faith.
Yeah. Well, I want to run down, just because we didn't hit on this, and there's a couple of things in this the notes that we have here. One of the ones that I really wanted to hit on, that I think is very interesting. Do you remember the "they are eating cats and dogs" line?
Of course I do.
And do you remember how that's basically gone away entirely, and not been a thing? So this does talk about, the immigrants from they had claimed that the immigrants from Haiti were
Yeah, in
eating
Ohio,
pets.
right?
Yeah. They were
Yeah,
yes, in
I
Ohio, eating
remember that
pets or
happening. Yeah,
geese.
yeah,
What was interesting is, I mean, local officials literally came out and said, "What? No, that's not a thing. That's not happening." But
yeah.
that's still, I see that sometimes, and I don't know if, again, it could, people love to make jokes about this stuff, but I still see people saying, like, the now that Trump's here, they're not eating the cats and dogs anymore, and it's like, maybe they just never were eating the cats and dogs.
Yeah,
Maybe that was just all bullshit.
yeah.
Oh, this was one other one, and then we can move on to the next point. But there is, because this, I've seen this going around, especially recently, that there's a claim that there were like 325,000 children missing. Have you heard about that?
I have not heard anything about this.
So there was, so I'm just going to read this. So it says, so Trump basically claimed that 325,000 children were missing, dead, or sex slaves or slaves. And basically what he did is he had like federal data, and he just kind of distorted it. Because there was like a federal oversight support that children were arriving at the southwest border alone, and then that they were released to the federal government custody. And then, so I'll just read, sorry. So I'm going to pick it right up right there. It was like, so they were released for federal custody. I thought outside every poll. Sorry, somebody comment. What do you think, are you saying you think there should be ice outside of every poll? Somebody commented we should just have ice outside of every polling place, checking IDs. I don't even think that would be a realistic solution at all. But carry on. So it says, so they were in government custody, they were given to Immigration and Customs support, and not served a notice to appear, and that happened with more than 291,000 children, and authorities issue. So the report said that unaccompanied children who did not appear for court were considered at higher risk for trafficking, exploitation, and forced labor, and the report neither states how many children have been trafficked nor says they're missing or dead. So, like, based on what that says, he says there are 325,000 children, but the report said that there were 291,000 children that were giving notices to appear, and then said that if they didn't appear, that they were at higher risk. But didn't actually give explicit numbers that there were children not appearing or that there were missing children. So the claim was, I guess, unfounded.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really,
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Again, this page that mom found it's on PolitiFact. It's just basically down the list of like multiple points that they make, was like the things where they claim that 10 million people had into the country under Biden, but it was like the whole thing of like it wasn't actually 10 million people at all, because it was the difference between encounters at the border, which is something that people tend to overlook. I mean, you would understand the difference between like an encounter versus somebody being like actually allowed into the country, because there were people being allowed into the country, but not just like, oh, they met the people at Border Patrol, and then Border Patrol just like, hey, yeah, come on through, guys. Like, they were detained, they were given court dates, and then they were allowed to come into the country. And what Trump's doing now is they'll come in and they're just basically detained or immediately expulsed. So this just the difference in the way that they're functioning on it. So yeah, this commenter in the chat seems to think that it would be a good idea for us to just have ICE sitting outside every poll place.
I mean, we can engage in that if you want. If you want to talk about it, like, I mean, explain why it would or wouldn't be.
Why?
Otherwise,
I would say the only reason I think it would be a really bad idea is, one, to me, if ICE as a law enforcement agency's entire purpose, right, is to do immigration control. I would also say that standing outside polling places is not doing that. But the second part of that, to me, because they've been functioning as Trump's like personal police force, is that at that point it, like, in my opinion, steps into the realm of like voter intimidation, right? You're gonna have ICE agents, because they've been picking up people that are legal citizens. I mean, like naturalized citizens with like the last name Hernandez, and they get scooped up by ICE. Like, yeah.
Because they've but that's the other thing too, is like, I think a lot of people don't realize that federal elections are run by the state. Like, the state is responsible for controlling those. So if you wanted police or something, that's fine, but like, ICE is a federal agency, and kind of like, how he did with the National Guard in LA. Like, if you want to use federal operatives, federal agents for federal purposes, that's fine, but the state run federal elections are not that.
Right.
Not to mention, do you know how cost prohibitive
that would be fucking insane.
Like, it would be so expensive. There are, I'm not even going to guess how many polling places there are. Like, I think my precinct has 2.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's one of like 40 or 50 precincts in Chicago. Like, it would be
nuts.
Tens of millions of agents around this country.
Yeah,
and you got to pay them all.
Yeah, you got to pay them.
That many people.
And yeah. It's on top of that, you couldn't just have them out there for election day. You would have to have them out there for early elections, which can go as long as 2 months. And so what? We're just going to have them checking IDs when people walk in the door. It's not a practical solution whenever you break down the logistics of it, whenever you break down the personnel requirements, whenever you break down the legality of it, right? Like, if you have ICE agents standing outside, it could be considered like voter intimidation. We have laws against that.
Sure.
So
we do.
Yeah. It's sometimes I can never tell whenever people are being genuine whenever they come in with these, or if we're just not really, maybe we're not really sure how those things would function, and we're just thinking of like blanket solutions. It's like whenever people say, it's like whenever Trump said that he would end the war between Ukraine and Russia day one. He would just make a phone call and end it. It's like, no, like, not that simple.
I think too is like, it's because I do know that is a big MAGA talking point that a bunch of illegals voted in the election.
Yeah, that was one of the counterpoints is on here.
And so here's the thing: is that belief stems from a misconstruction of certain truths.
Right.
So there are municipalities around that allow undocumented migrants to vote, but they only get to vote in local elections. And they do so because the policies of those local elections directly affect them.
Yeah.
So like I don't know which, but there are municipalities around the country that allow non-citizens to vote in local only elections. So they don't get to vote for federal elections. But that being true sort of breeds the fear of, well, how do we
How do
know
we
that?
know? Yeah.
How do we know that they're not voting in federal elections? Well, you know, I guess just try to find out. Like that's the other thing too is like
You'd have to you'd have to look into it. I imagine that if they're allowing migrants to vote in local elections, they have some kind of measure to prevent them from voting in federal. I would actually be interested in and doing it because my guess would be that some of the states that do that probably do require voter ID,
Sure.
and that's how
And
they mitigate it.
they probably have two different ballots. Hey, let's see your voter ID. Oh, you have it.
Yeah.
Or let's check your voter registration. Oh, you're local only. So
Yeah.
local and federal, here's both ballots.
Yes.
And do mistakes happen? I don't know. I couldn't say not, but
I
the other
wouldn't
thing
say I
too
wouldn't
is
say enough. Probably I would say not enough, and I imagine I don't know. I would imagine that there would be checks in there. I would just have to look it up. I don't want to. Just to be clear, I don't actually know. I'm just speculating because it seems to me that they would have something.
of course they do. And that's the other thing too is like the majority of elections are not so close that one or two like they're good enough. Like when we need exact science, when we need exact counts, is like let's go back to the 2000 election. That was one where literally I think it was like 17 votes or something.
Yeah.
Like that was insanely close. And so when we get into that situation where it's so unique and so stresses our system, where these little cracks, these little leniencies that we have do actually matter. Um, but I think the biggest thing is if somebody like this goes back to this whole like you're the fact thing is I am personally of the belief that if you're making a statement, if you're saying this is a fact, you have the obligation.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And some people don't believe that.
Yeah. That's the. Yes. And that's. Some people don't believe that, but that's definitely the case. In any debate, right? If you make a claim, you have to be able to back it up. Anytime you're having like a debate at all, in my opinion, if you're arguing with someone and you're making claims to a things, you should probably be able to, you know, you should probably be able to back that claim up with something more than just, well, that's what I heard or that's what I read. It drives me crazy too because whenever you see, sometimes people will make a claim and then you'll counter that claim with like the factual basis, and then the people will go, well, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
That's a bold claim you made.
Like in the law,
you don't have it.
In the law, we call it the burden of proof.
Yeah.
Every side always has a burden of proof.
Yes.
And
it's the same. It's the same term in debate. The burden of proof. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. On that point, one of the thing in here was the falsehoods about non-citizen voting. So Trump had claimed that Democrats are letting migrants into the U.S. and signing them up to vote in federal elections. Obviously, that was just a claim. I remember, there was a report out from, I think it probably came out of PolitiFact as well. That was basically like there's zero evidence to support this because migrants can't vote in federal elections to the point that you were talking about, that they might be voting in local elections, but the measurement, like there's no proof that they're voting in federal elections. It's just a claim. I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like the complexity, especially with how many people vote in this country or how many people are registered to vote in this country. The complexity of that makes it where people like Trump can make the claim and then people can speculate that claim is true, because trying to find out otherwise, it just takes more work than people would be putting into it.
Yeah, so the old saying, the famous, I think I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like assertions made without proof can be dismissed.
Yeah.
Like I forget what it's called. It's like a well-known thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Yeah, let's move on. Because the next one we had, So this one, so the economic claims about taxes, deficits, and program impacts, and this is actually an interesting. The big beautiful bill was actually an interesting point of contention. I saw, obviously, most Democrats were against it, but I was surprised to see quite a few Republicans, speak out against it. Um,
Um, I mean, yeah, it's from a deficit hawk standpoint, which particularly the Paul Ryans and Rand Pauls,
yeah, Rand Paul
like
was like,
they were deficit hawks. They're
yeah,
deficit hawks, and this idea that the government should, I forget who said it was. I think it was who made this big deal of, we tell people that if you don't have the $200 in your savings account, it's irresponsible to buy a $500 car or
right,
whatever. Like the government should behave the same way. And like so, yeah, it really pissed off actual fiscal conservatives,
yeah,
because people
because they were slashing taxes
misunderstand.
and increasing spending, right? That was the biggest thing I remember was like they
Yeah,
cut down. One, it solidified the tax cuts that that Trump had implemented in his first term, right? Took those because they
yeah,
were set to expire this year, basically made them indefinite. And then
yeah.
on top of that, it also increased a lot of spending because of because the ICE budget went fucking insane. And
Like
then
10 times.
yeah, but then there were tons of other changes, and that they hadn't made enough cuts because there was also they didn't. This is such a loophole way to say it, but they didn't cut Medicare. They just made it where people probably won't be able to keep it like they were able to before. So they didn't cut it outright. They just kind of uh, basically
Yeah.
made it harder for people to have and
Well,
keep it.
and I mean, it's hypocritical because one of the biggest, and I think legitimate conservative talking points, like genuine conservative talking points, is about how bloated and inefficient the government is. Because it is. Bureaucracies are slow.
Yeah,
They are because, like we were talking about, process. They're process oriented. Um, so, true conservatives will rail against administrative loopholes for businesses and corporations. Yet they're fine with these ones.
right.
And like like if you are against administrative loopholes, I am fine with that. Like that is a legitimate thing we need to be concerned about. But like, don't ignore it. If something is wrong and bad, let it be wrong and bad, and don't do it. Like
Yeah,
have some consistency and ideological integrity.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, like I agree that that was actually one of the bigger standing points. I felt like a lot of Democrats had was like, all the talk about how the deficit is out of control and how horrible the deficit is, and then the deficit got really bad in Trump one, and then here we are again, and the deficit's going to get really bad in Trump two. The argument is that the tariffs will make up for the spending, yeah, for the spending cuts, right? But the thing that I keep thinking about, no matter how anybody feels about it, we wind up paying those. Like the importer pays them, to,
Yeah,
and so like yeah, I guess the tariffs might do that. I'm not sure that they will, but they might, and if they do, that's still us paying for it. It's just a different way to tax it. Whereas we didn't necessarily have to cut the taxes like we did. I just every time
yeah,
I
and
think about how it works, I'm just like, seems really
so
bad and crazy, so crazy ass way to
no,
do
I
it.
mean it's again it goes back to the complexity. Like people don't understand how, like, and I don't truly understand how. Like I'm not an economist.
Yeah,
But like, so the problem with tariffs is that
you cut out.
and do you know what the, oh, sorry. I said tariffs are a regressive tax. Do you
Yeah.
know what that means?
Yes.
Okay, so that
Sorry.
that is the ultimate problem with them, is because, and then the counterpoint, it seems counterintuitive that tariffs raise the price of, um but it does. So, let's assume we have two companies. We have company A and company B. Company B is in China. The Chinese company can sell its widget for $10. But now they're getting a $5 tariff, a 50% tariff.
Yeah.
So now they have to sell they have to sell their widget for $15.
Yes.
Or they can take a hit, which they theoretically can do, but in capitalist system, that's not how it
That's not
works.
what you do.
So they pass the cost along. But now you have company A, who's built in America, who was selling its widget for $10. Now they can raise their price to $14, still capture the market share
Yeah.
because the other side can't compete at that price.
When we actually did the tariff thing, we actually did a big episode on it previously. Because for me, where I got to was the inconsistency of the messaging that the administration had. Because it was that, oh, we're going to tariff things so that way we can start making things in America again. But then we stopped or lowered tariffs if we could make a deal. And so then it turned into, okay, are we trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States, or are we trying to make better trade deals, which we already had good trade deals? And to that point, if it was to make better trade deals, why are we doing it like this? Like we're America. We're still we're like one of the economic powerhouse of the West. We could just say, hey, come sit at the table. Let's talk about trade. Like we don't have to basically like give everybody the finger, the bird, and be like, nope, you're gonna get tariffed unless you come to the table and talk to us.
I mean, that's been it. I mean, art of the deal. It's been his thing since the 80s.
He said it. You said the thing. Say the line.
Yeah, it's been his thing.
Yeah.
That's just his strategy on negotiation.
Yeah. When what's interesting is that places like China, for example, they were like, fuck off, we don't care. Because I think there was I was watching kind of a reporting of it where basically China's doing the thing that everybody thought they would do, which is they're just basically going to funnel their exports through another country that has lower tariffs. So they don't have to make the deal. They can just be like, whatever, fine, and they'll just do it through another country. And
and I mean, I think it's really interesting too because this sort of globalization thing and the free market, free trade was the cornerstone of Reaganomics. Was the cornerstone
right.
of
We've talked about this.
Neoliberal economics.
Right.
It's been the thing since the 80s. And what is really fascinating to me is manufacturing being overseas doesn't matter as long as you're still on the neoliberal economics train. Once you try to step off the train of neoliberalism and close down borders, like that's when it starts to matter. Like domestic manufacturing matters for, I think, one thing, and we've talked about this before, is like being able to make our own weapons, like arms manufacturing. But if we're not planning on going to war or countering an emergency of some stand, like it doesn't actually matter if China makes our stuff if you still buy into neoliberalism.
Right.
Once we get off that train, though, it becomes real hard to spool up here in the United States. So
yeah.
Like, there's another, again, I'm a big reader, The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal World. I think it's Schlesinger. No, that's wrong. It's another book I just recently read where he talks about the cyclical nature of this, and he thinks it's starting to crack. And he said it started to crack with the Occupy Wall Street, Bernie Sanders, where we started to get this super populism talking points. Trump himself is super populist in this.
Yeah.
Where the way they talk about the economy is breaking Reaganomics, which will fundamentally change the world.
Yeah,
because the whole world has bought into
we all
this.
use it. Yeah,
we all use it.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting to see where we're going from here. A little bit of a tirade on my end.
Yeah, and the other side of it is basically I'm sorry, I'm adjusting volume on you just a little bit because somebody said you were quiet. But the other side of it too is that it does ignore that there's a lot of reasons we don't do manufacturing here. One is because a lot of people don't want to do those jobs because they can be hard jobs and they don't always pay well. And there's the difficulty of it being like, with the way unions and everything works right now. I know that there's a lot of questionality on on what it would look like in terms of wages. The other side of it is
Yeah.
we do probably more manufacturing here than people give credit for. We just do a lot of final assembly manufacturing, right? So like, I know
Yeah.
like for a lot of things, that's kind of what America does is we do final assembly. So we'll have
Um,
things that are like the parts are sent here, and then we have factories where people put them together, and then
yeah.
that's yeah,
And so, do you know the YouTube channel Smarter Every Day?
yeah. I love that guy.
He actually did a whole series on this where he talks about the problem with offshoring stuff. And he talks about this where, yeah, we do a lot of assembly here. But what we have lost the ability to do is die making, to make the parts that make the parts.
Yeah.
So we have lost the expertise because we haven't flexed those
I actually
muscles
think yeah, I think I
in
remember
so
that
many
episode.
years.
Yeah.
We've lost the sort of like infrastructure and like expertise to actually like ramp up super fast.
Yeah.
Because like so much of modern manufacturing is about figuring out how to make the mold that lets you pump out widgets as fast as you can.
Right.
And China has super good mold makers. So that's part of the reason they make them over there, is because they're just better at it.
Yeah, they've just and the other side of it I was talking about was even if we brought some of that manufacturing back, that's not a 4-year job. Like some of the things that people would want to bring back here would require like 10 years of infrastructure build up
Yeah.
before we could even start doing it. Before we
Yes.
could even employ people to do those jobs.
Yeah. I mean, people don't like, factories have to get made.
Yeah, you got and there's
Like,
well, we already have them here. I'm like, no, we don't. We had some. A lot of them are gone. A lot of them were disassembled and moved away. Like we don't have them here. We're not just like no.
yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is like when people think about this like offshoring manufacturing, they think about like, Chinese sweatshops. And that's not as big of a problem as people think it is. Like, again, the biggest problem is expertise.
Right.
Is we just don't have that many people here who can do it,
Yeah.
who can make the parts to make the parts.
Right. Or even like the drive to do that. Right. That's the other side of it is how many people want to do that job. Right. Because that is kind of the other aspect is, especially right now, this is actually a mix of immigration and economic. We actually have a problem right now where we don't have enough workers, right? That's why the unemployment rate is as low as it is because there's jobs that we want filled and we don't have the people to fill them. And so that's like another
Now,
aspect of it is like we're gonna create these jobs. Who's gonna do them? We're
so I'll push back a little bit, because let's go with the stereotypical, the good old southern border fruit picker.
Mhm.
Okay, it's a lot of people, one of the big counterpoints to, they took our job is, yeah, but they're doing jobs that Americans do. What you're talking about now is, except I guarantee you that if you're like, okay, this job makes $35 an hour and gets help, you know who's going to do that job? Americans
Yeah, sure.
do that
And
job. So it's Americans are not so much unwilling to do the job; they're unwilling to do it for the carrot you're offering them.
true. And I would say that that's where we get into like probably this is my more right leaning side of things.
Yeah,
Um,
and this is where my communist comes
yeah.
out.
Somebody says it's a thing that I know you and I agree on, where they say the biggest problem is that we pay CEOs and people at the top way too damn much than we need, and we need to even out the taxes like they were before Reagan.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too, is people don't realize is they talk about the golden age of manufacturing. The
Yeah.
highest tax rate was like 90%.
Yeah. It was
Now
crazy.
there are reasons for that,
Yeah.
but I don't think evening out the tax is the problem necessarily.
Because
And there's
there's a lot
actually
more money in circulation now.
yeah, but the other thing too is like the reason CEOs are paid so much is for a very specific reason, which is companies are responsive to not necessarily responsive to, buyers. They owe their allegiance, and the whole corporation owes its allegiance to its investors.
Right.
So CEOs keep their job only if they extract more money for the investor. So like there's an actual negative loop of the most successful CEOs actually are worse for their employees. Now, certain companies
Right.
like Amazon,
I don't think
in
anybody disagrees
particular,
with that. I think that's actually
yeah,
where a lot of the animosity for CEOs comes from, is because
yeah,
generally, if a CEO is good at their job, they're getting paid a shit ton of money to basically shit on the workers.
yes, it's extractive. But like what we have right now is like, Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world. And the reason it's so hard to take them on is they're super consumer focused. Like they are like incredibly friendly to.
Right.
It's because they have to extract that money from someone, and they do.
And
It's
it's
just it's like seeing how the sausage is made.
yeah.
Sausage is delicious until you know how it's made.
Yeah, until you know how it's made. That's yeah, and that's true. I mean, I actually not. I don't think it's anybody you know. But I actually have friends that don't shop at Amazon. They do a lot of like
Yeah.
secondhand shopping stuff like that because they are like, no, I will not support that corporate monster and the way that it treats
Yeah.
its workers. And what's what an interesting counter to that is, and I find this very interesting. Video game industry. Um,
Mhm.
so only really at the top because like you get down to some of the lower, or I guess it really depends. Like some companies still treat their workers like crap, but like here's a good one. Everybody hates EA, right?
Yeah.
I have friends that work in this industry, and I have one friend that works at id. I have another friend that works at EA Sports. Like he literally helps develop Madden games. That dude loves his job. Like
Yeah.
they're treated super well. They have great hours. They have wonderful benefits. The culture, he says, the worker culture is fantastic, and people fucking hate EA. They hate that company.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because
Just the
part
other
of the
side of
problem.
that. I don't.
Well, no, it's think about it. Like why do people hate EAs? Because like my wife loves the Sims game, but every single expansion costs $35.
Right.
It's because they are extracting money from the consumers. So we go rabble, rabble, rabble
Right.
because it's not an unlimited pool. They have to get that money from somewhere.
Right.
So if they take it from us, they can treat their people better.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the things. Like I remember the up years ago where games finally went from $59.99, which is what they were for 20 years,
Yeah.
to $69.99, and people were
Losing their minds.
furious.
I
But it's
was.
because
Yeah.
yeah,
I had a very lengthy debate with some of my friends about the cost of games going up because I was
yeah,
like, you guys realize that of all the industries that have been like completely decimated by inflation, the gaming industry has basically been like, what's inflation? Like that's
yeah. Well, and it's not so much that is it's like again, it's part of those some of those reasons those coders got treated so terribly is because companies knew that they had to artificially deflate the value of their games
right,
because otherwise we would protest.
right.
And it happened.
No,
Now the problem is now that they've risen the price of games, we've all sort of become like the frog in the boiling water where we've gotten accustomed to it. And it's fine now.
yeah.
But the question is, are they taking that extra $10 per title and putting it back into their employees, or are they giving it to their investors?
Well, I
What
would
are they
say
doing with it?
what's one thing too that's distinctly unique about about the gaming world too, though, is that the market is competitive in a much different way than any other industry. Mostly because of of the indie side of things, right? Like indie games are massively
Yeah,
successful and their prices are always generally reasonable and the workers are treated well, and so they're across the board generally indie like it's just some, I don't know. It's something that I observe as like unique, because if you look at something besides gaming, like if you look at retail, for example, like you have places like Walmart and Best Buy and Target and Amazon, but like there, you don't have a mom and pop shop that's competing with Walmart, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
the
that,
economy of scales,
yeah, yeah. And I
which is funny. Oh, go ahead.
no, that was it's an amusing thought when you think about how the indie gaming sphere, right, or even indie, I guess anything entertainment wise, has like a side of it that can keep up with the bigger conglomerates because of just the way that those functions, but you can't do it for certain industries.
Well, and the funny thing is, the gaming industry perfectly encapsulates how the neoliberal idea was supposed to work. This idea that by spreading out manufacturing across the world, we get so much competition and it lowers prices, and that
It
works.
did.
It did, and it works for the gaming. It works for the gaming industry because we all have access to everyone,
Yeah.
and everyone is equal because, in the sense of, they don't have to compete for limited resources. Somebody just makes up some freaking numbers on a page, and that's code, and that code becomes a game.
Right.
We don't. It's not about that dog eat dog cutthroat of resource hoarding.
Right.
It's more
Right.
artistic. It's more free. It's more, like, the abundance of it is just unlimited, and it works when everything is abundant.
Right. No, yeah, it's this is a fun conversation. It's just, we totally gone off the rails, but it's a fun conversation.
Oh, it's economic related.
Yeah. We got about 30 more minutes. I don't know how much time you've got.
I plan on being here until 5,
Well,
or until
great.
nobody cares about us anymore.
Yeah. Just to wrap up some points, one of the things that we talked about in terms of the Big Beautiful Bill that I thought was interesting was, do you remember how the big messaging side of it was the no tax on tips? Have you followed how that actually worked?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, a huge majority of the people who get benefit of that
Right.
don't actually make enough to pay a significant amount of tax anymore. So, like, that's part of it. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. So somebody says, if only we could punish greed. That's an interesting prospect. One of the things that Josh and I have talked about is, and this is probably the only benefit of capitalism, is that it actually harnesses human greed and funnels it into like a societal need or want. Is by design how it's supposed to work, right? Like, if society needs a thing, what ideally capitalism would do is it would be like, oh, there's a need for this thing, and that a capitalist, an investor, someone with the either capital or infrastructure or whatever, would then focus their time and efforts into developing and building that thing. So I guess in a way, capitalism does punish greed, because if there's not a need for it but you want to make money, then, or if you try to sell it for too much or whatever, then ultimately your greed is gonna drive you out of business, and then that's your punishment. Your business fails. That happened with, like, Toys R Us. Did you ever hear about?
I don't know why they failed, but
So Toys R Us, the owner thought that online retail was like a fashion. Like, people don't want to buy stuff online. They want to go into the store and buy their products. And so Toys R Us did not build an online presence. And then guess who? And then Amazon, being who Amazon is, that's what they did.
Yeah.
And they basically ran Toys R Us out of business.
It was a calculated decision, but that guy was bad at math.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess to your point still, though, like, yeah, if the other side is how would you punish greed? I don't know. The French did it pretty good.
Yeah.
But so the tax on tips thing, this was one of the biggest selling points I felt like it was for, like, your everyday people, especially like your lower income workers, if they're working within the service industry. So the tax on tips thing, it was only for cash tips. You said that, right? It's only up to a certain dollar amount, right? It's only up to, I think it's like 20. Damn it, I had all these numbers memorized whenever we were talking about it, but it's like something like 20,000, 25,000. And then if you don't even hit that threshold on cash only tips, then you don't get the tax break. So, the reason it's so important is how many, most tips these days are not done in cash, right? Most tips are written on your receipt. Those tips that are written on your receipt, they don't go towards that $29,000 a year. The only tips that you can get tax breaks on are your cash tips, and you have to hit that threshold to get the break. So most servers aren't ever going to see that, ever. They're not even going to see the tax break. Yeah. But it was this huge selling point. And then the other side of it is it ends in like 2028, I think. Like at the end, once I want to still believe it. Once Trump leaves office, it goes away. So it's like a tax break that was like trying to use a selling point to bring in popular, to make the bill popular, and then it's like it's a nothing burger. Like most people aren't even going to get to take advantage of it.
And it's crazy to me. Is like one of the most insidious things that both sides do, and I know you hate both side argument, but this idea that they make, the Republicans are really good at it, making laws not going into effect until midterms.
Yes.
So like, or when the next president comes in, so it's like a law gets triggered, and then like
they can say it was his law
causes dominoes to fall, and you're like, what? This law passed 4 years ago. It's just coming into effect now.
Yeah, this viewer just said the same thing, and the people aren't going to be kicked off Medicaid, et cetera, until after the midterms. Exactly. That's exactly what. Yes, and it's just the method by which they'll be able to be like. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm laughing because if I don't laugh, I'll fucking cry. No, it's just like I was talking about this with another friend who is in the legal field, and they were saying the same thing, that it's going to be something that they try to use as leverage to bring Republican support during the midterms. So
yeah, no, it's so insidious.
Yeah, it's maddening. It's actually maddening. Okay, so this was let's see, we got two more. If we can get to them. So the next one is the mischaracterizations in foreign policy, especially regarding Ukraine. So the false or misleading narratives about allies leaders, Ukraine's role in the war, and promises about the U.S. policy and what it will and won't do. This is actually something I've been following recently because of the rolling out the red carpet for Trump. It was insane to me. I'm like, that guy's a war criminal. like that guy's
for
like,
who?
So whenever Trump came to visit, did you? You may not know, I guess, huh? So
I don't know. Like
it's okay. So recently, in an effort to reach resolution with the Russia-Ukraine war, the president invited Vladimir Putin to the United States, to Alaska.
Okay, so when Trump rolled out the red carpet for Putin.
Yes.
Okay, you said when the carpet was rolled out for Trump. I just wasn't sure.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the confusion. Yes. So when I meant whenever Trump rolled out the red carpet for the war.
Then he called Alaska Russia like 4 times.
Yes. And then he brings Zelensky after basically placating a dictator, brings Zelensky in and does another live press conference with Zelensky, which, by the way, I thought this Zelensky is he does this thing that I always think is really cool whenever people that don't speak English really well, but he's a comedian, right? And so whenever he came the first time for that shit show, he was still injecting humor against some of the people that were asking him questions. So he came this time and he was still in all black, but with like a turtleneck, but he put a jacket on, like a suit jacket. And the guy that told him, like, how did you show up here without a suit? He goes, oh, I noticed you wore a suit this time. And Zelensky was like, yeah, I put this jacket on, but I see you're still wearing the same suit. I just remember that interaction. I thought it was funny. But the thing that I guess kind of makes me a little crazy. So Trump has claimed that the U.S. gave Ukraine more than 3 times as much aid as Europe, even though the official figures in Europe actually show that Europe was providing more direct bilateral aid. And what I'm sure you probably understand this more than some people would. What we gave Ukraine was old weaponry, right? Like people keep thinking that like, oh, we just shipped them tens of millions of dollars. It's like we just gave them a lot of equipment, like a shit ton of equipment. Whereas like Europe, Europe was straight up like, here's money, like just take money from us.
Yeah.
And so this idea like, oh yeah, we gave them 350 billion, and Europe's only given them like, like 100 billion. It's like, bro, we gave them equipment. Like you could say whatever you want to say, but we haven't given Ukraine a lot of like money. We've just given them a lot of like tools so that way they can wage their war.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how informed you are about that whole situation and kind of the ups and downs of it, because one of the other things that I keep seeing people make comments on is like, that Trump's going to try and not have an election because he's going to try and start a war and basically do what Zelensky's done. Have you seen that?
I've read about it. Like I've read it. I mean, for me, the one sort of thing about the whole foreign policy thing is, of all the areas that Trump claims providence, this is one he's got.
Yeah.
Like the president has a huge amount of power
when it comes to foreign policy. Yes.
So like whether or not we agree with it, like unlike some of the other stuff, like, yeah, I think it's some bad ideas, but like he can kind of do what he wants in this, and he's, I mean, it's the whole American philosophy since Teddy carries, speak softly and carry a big stick.
Yes.
That's what we do.
That is what we do. It was actually, I'm reading General Mattis's book. And I'm at the part where he's talking about the, whenever Assad used chemical weapons and how, Obama had said that's the line in the sand, we're like, we don't cross that line. And that whenever he did use it, how CENTCOM had been like spooling up, like, okay, we're going to have some kind of response. And then we ultimately wound up not doing something. But that's what I think about whenever we're talking about the situation in Ukraine is like, we have the ability to like, be like, hey, y'all, you guys need to fucking figure this out and not placate Russia as the invader. And for whatever reason, we're not doing that.
For whatever reason that may be.
Look, this is not look. I'm not going to throw out any theories about a pissing video. I'm just going to say, for some reason, we're not doing that. But the thing about the Zelensky elections, because someone's pointing that out too. That's in Ukraine's constitution, right? That if they're at war, they don't have elections. What I find interesting, and I'm going to lose this train of thought, because it is that MAGA will make the claim that Zelensky is a dictator because they've not had elections, without recognizing that is the way that they are following their constitution. And then they'll make this claim that like, well, he should just do it. He should just do it anyway. Like he should just do like a popularity vote or something, like why doesn't he resign if he's not popular? And it's like, I mean, because they're not like, again, they're following their constitution. So to me, it's like the reinforcement that MAGA doesn't like following the constitution. It's like, that's their law.
Yeah, no. And I mean, like, I don't actually, like, it's been a while since I've read it. Like, I think the only thing the president can do is get rid of habeas corpus. I don't know how much else the Constitution specifically says he can do.
Right.
But like, what's funny is like, you go to dictator, is like, the actual origin of the word dictator comes from Rome.
Right.
And literally, in Roman law, a dictator was somebody appointed during times of crisis or war to suspend government action, deal with the crisis, and then they would hand back the power to the republic.
Yeah, that was the thing that I always thought was interesting whenever we talk about, like, because I know that the Gladiator movies are fiction based. Well, they're historical fiction because some of it anyway. But the thing that I always find really interesting is like people not realizing that whenever there were Caesars, right? Caesars were there because Rome was at war, and that Caesar would be in charge. But the Senate was still existed. Like there were still senators. They were still, they were still elected by the people. They were still, they didn't have any government control, but they were still like these elected officials for the people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a weird corollary that happened at around 0, or 53 BC, where we used to have a branch of government elected by the people that had a lot of power, and then it slowly got transferred to a single guy named Julius Caesar, and then he did some stuff, and all of a sudden we have an empire.
Wow, that sounds eerily familiar.
What is that about, right?
Oh God! Again, we laugh because if we didn't, we'd cry. We got about 10 minutes. So for anybody that's, I appreciate everybody hopping in on my channel. We're also streaming live on the Hopeful Resistance channel. If you want to go check that out, that's the official channel for all of this. I'm just hosting it on pretty much every platform I can because this is a kind of a passion project for me and Mom. But one of the things that we talk about at the end of it is, what do we do about all of these things? The first thing I guess we should note is midterms are coming up. Depending on how involved or uninvolved you want to be, you can always get out and canvas. And I was thinking about getting with some of my friends. And take it easy. Thank you for watching. But one of the things I was trying to talk to my friends about was getting out and seeing if we can canvas for some of the the midterm candidates this year. Especially with our redistricting.
Yeah. So another thing too is I know this is not what people want to hear, but the most important thing you can vote for and the most important people you can vote for are your local elections.
Yeah.
They impact your life so much more than federal. Like, here in Chicago, like all this stuff about not abortions and having all these protections stripped away, we haven't felt that. We might feel some of the economic parts of it, but like Pritzker, our governor, our local officials, like they're not, just because they can strip away rights doesn't mean they are. So your local people have so much more impact on your life, and they are also way more directly, liable to you. And they are responsible for you.
The question I have, because I feel like the answer is different for everybody. Whenever you say local, do you mean just to the Chicago area, or do you mean to Illinois as a whole, or like?
I mean, it's different. It's different rings of locality.
Right.
Like in Chicago, our local, like our alderman, our governor, or our mayor and stuff, like they do a lot that directly impacts our life.
Right.
But because our governor and our local, municipality are in lockstep, they don't really like each other, but like the policies are pretty much similar.
Right.
There's more, the state matters a little bit more. Whereas you in like Texas, I'm going to go ahead and guess you are not a fan of Mr. Abbott.
No, I am not I don't call him Mr. Abbott. I'm kind of the mean, rude guy. I call him Governor Hot Wheels because I fucking hate that he placates the federal administration so much as the governor of our state. Especially because if it was flipped, like he was governor for Obama and was flipping the fuck out about whenever Obama was using National Guard troops for training, or when he was doing military training, it was like calling up the National Guard, but then he's like full, dicks out for Harambe for Trump for what happened in California with the National Guard there. So it's like, I personally hate that inconsistency of behavior. We talked about that earlier. Like, I just think you should be unilateral, right? You should be.
Stick to your morals. But like, so in a situation like this, where your local politics may be at discord with your state politics, your local one matters way more.
Yeah.
Because if you go to like, Dallas, Austin, Houston, like the policies that those municipalities put in place are going to be way more protective than I imagine the state protections in Texas are.
Yeah. And the downside, of course, being Texas is massive. So it really, really sucks to have a guy that lives in Austin that is completely disconnected from where things are doing where I live. That's like, it's just like a complete disconnect on it. But what the question that I asked you that question, because to me, when I say local, I mean, I vote in my local elections. I think locally, like state local, like, and to me, that's because my local, like my city representatives are at direct odds with my state. So there's a lot of me like I reach out to my state senator probably, or my state rep probably about as much as I reach out to my federal rep. Although recently it's definitely been yelling at my federal rep a lot more. And when I go to canvass, I do want to try and exclusively canvass for my federal rep, like for a new federal representative, because we're coming up on a Senate race.
So I mean, it depends on what affects you. Like as Chicagoans, we are really, really good at hitting our mayors.
Yeah.
Like it's like a pastime at this point.
Yeah.
But like some of the stuff they do here is they get yelled at. Like my alderman lives like 3 blocks from me. And if I wanted to go like yell at him at a town hall, I can do that.
You can just go down there and yell at him.
I could just go yell at Mr. Martin.
Hey, at least yours do town halls. Ours don't. But
yeah.
So that was because that's one thing. Yes, get involved. Get involved in the election. You got the midterms coming up. You've got, if you can get out and canvass, do that. One of the other apps, and Josh, you've been on before. One of the other things that we do a lot of, like, I guess, call outs for is the 5 Calls app. If you're not familiar with what that is, the 5 Calls app is literally an app on your phone where you put in where you live, and it tells you who your representatives are and who your senators are. And yeah. Hey, look who it is. Mom says, I'll pay you $1 to yell at your town hall.
Mr. Matt Martin. He's a nice guy. I like him. I've never had to yell at him. I'll go yell at him.
But but the 5 Calls app, if for those that aren't familiar with it, you can hop out. You can download the app, and it literally gives you like all the information, gives you phone numbers, and it gives you topics. That's the big one that I've talked to people about. Some people are like, they'll read about something and then they'll get mad about it, and then they're like, what am I supposed to do about this? It's like, well, if you download the app, you can find out who your rep is. You can the app will give you the phone number. You can call the phone number, and it depending on the topic, it'll give you a script that you can read, and you can just call and say like, hi, my name is so and so. This is the topic that I'm calling about. These are the problems that I have with it, and it's like a very well structured thing. One piece of advice I try to give people, because you get kind of nervous when you think about calling your reps if you've never done it before, right? Like this little, like the anxiety rush of having to talk to some aide, like some guy is just doing his job and you've got to call, like you're pissed off about a thing. The office is open from 7 to 7. So if you call, and I think it's Eastern. So if you call, after 7 o'clock, you'll get the voicemail, and if you can leave voicemails. The key to that is, if you do leave a voicemail, you do have to give your whole address. Just so I guess a heads up on that. One of the other, we're going to wrap up here soon. One of the other things Mom really likes is called Car Campaign. So I don't know if you were on here or if you've probably seen Mom talk about it whenever you've watched other episodes. You can print out these cards and then you can just kind of leave them in places, right? Like if you, I've always thought, like, I think it'd be a great idea. I don't know that I would want to leave it for like my server, but like if I was like, if you go to get your brakes changed or something, right? They always have like those magazine displays out like on the table. Maybe just like drop a little card out there. Somebody just comes along and finds it and goes, huh. I just think there's tons of creative ways I think you could work with those things, and that's probably one of the ones that popped into my head. Besides that, there's the 50-51. That's, if you want to get involved in protesting, 50-51 and Indivisible. 50-51 literally has it like once a month. There's a protest somewhere in your state, and if you want to go and see where they are, you can get involved. But yeah, that's all there is. Josh, I appreciate you showing up, homie.
Of course, bud.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. I feel like we should have probably argued with each other more, but we'll get there.
I mean, like I've said, is over the last couple of years, I've drawn you over to the dark side. I've enticed you with my smooth words.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't like I got more informed. It was just Josh being like, "Come on, man, free healthcare." No. But yeah, thanks, man. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next Sunday. I don't know if Josh will be joining me again, or if I'll be riding solo, or if Mom will be making it back. But one way or the other, we will catch y'all all next time. Take it easy.
Peace.